All right, hello YouTube. Luke is actually on vacation, so you just got me this week. As you see by the title, we're just gonna do a podcast. We're gonna do a nice little video. I'm gonna be talking about some things with the Song of Ice and Fire relating to the next book, The Winds of Winter, if we ever get it. Seeing as though it's been over 10 years. Love to see that. But yeah, we're just gonna be going over some things mainly in like the north with like the Stannis plot line, Jon Snow's plot line, and then like maybe who wrote the Pink Letter, kind of get into conspiracies. Uh, but yeah, let me know if you guys want to see more of these videos. It just is kind of just a random video. I didn't really have any games I wanted to play for this week, so I thought we'd just do a nice simple video. Also, there are spoilers in this video if you have not read the books. This video will mostly pertain to the books, but there are some things we will talk about in the show which will also be spoilers. So, if you don't want the show or book spoiled, click off the video. That is your last warning. So, yeah. Getting into it, I want to start with my favorite character. So, my favorite character is Stannis Baratheon, or Stannis the Manus, the goat. I love his character. I think it's a lot going on there, and he's just a badass. So, kind of my favorite. But right now in the books, the situation is not looking the best. Right now his army is kind of freezing, starving. We get evidence that they're even like starting to eat the dead. They're like dead soldiers or whatever. So not a good situation. With that, Stannis also has Asha or Yar, depending on show or book, and Theon as his prisoners. Right now he's encamped basically next to a lighthouse, which is big significance for what is probably going to happen, I think. With that, you also have the Freys, who have been sent out with the Manderleys to actually take out Stannis. Now, what me and I think a lot of people think is what's probably going to happen is they're going to use some sort of, decoy, basically. So they're going to use the lighthouse, as it has the light or whatever. They're going to, like, turn that off and then probably do a fake fire to make the Freys think that's the lighthouse. They push onto the ice, and Stannis breaks the ice with, say, a catapult or something. Just because we've gotten a lot of, like, a little bit of, hints, just because we see that Stannis isn't worried. He wants them to come to him. We are also told that they've been fishing in the ice, putting holes into it, trying to get fish and stuff. So there's just been a lot of like hints that that's possibly going to happen. Plus you have the Manderleys, who are already looking to betray the Freys and Boltons, with the whole Davos plot line, which we might talk about later in this video. But in short, basically Davos is sent by Wyman Manderley to go get Rickon Stark, who is in Skagos, which is like a cannibal island. But basically, Wyman Manderley already trying to betray them. He's also already fed the Freys Frey pies, because he killed Rhaegar Frey and can't remember the other one that's there in White Harbor. But he basically kills them, puts them into a pie, and feeds it to the Freys. So it's basically the Arya plot, like how she bakes the Freys in the show and feeds it to Walder Frey. But with that being said, so you have that. The Karstarks, the half that is with Stannis, so Arnulf Karstark, Stannis figures out basically their entire little coup or whatever, shuts it down, and basically has the loyalty of the Karstarks at this point. Okay, sorry. I just did a little bit of a double check to make sure it was Arnulf Karstark. I was right on that. But basically, Stannis finds that out, basically holds them like captive prisoner to where he, the Karstarks, unless they want to see their lord die, have to fight for Stannis. So Stannis does a great job there. And it's kind of what the opposite of what Robb did. Robb just straight up just killed him. So, I mean, Stannis is looking good there. He has the Karstark force, or at least half of them, because the other, with the Boltons. But with that being said, so we get all this information. It looks like Stannis is at least going to win the first battle. Now, what happens after that is kind of a mystery. So the Boltons, for the most part, could stay in the, Winterfell, wait out, the storm or whatever. There's just a lot going on with the Stannis plot. Now, I think something that could be interesting is because something I want to talk about later, the pink letter, it could be something Stannis did, in there where Ramsay says Stannis is dead. Now, that could be Ramsay predicting that the Freys and the Manderleys kill Stannis, or maybe Stannis fakes his death or something. I'm not sure, but I do think it's going to be a lot more drawn out. Because we see in the show, Stannis kind of just gets just railed. Like, he just walks up to the Winterfell and dies. Like, there's no strategic thought. He just goes up there and dies. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, what I could see happening that I think makes a lot of sense for the story is Stannis goes to attack Winterfell and ends up dying. So maybe they win, but Stannis dies. I could see something like that because we know Jon Snow is probably going to get resurrected. And something we know from George R. R. Martin, because it's one of the 3 things that he told D&D about the show, was Shireen gets burned. Now, what's very interesting about this is Shireen isn't actually with Melisandre at this point, isn't with Stannis at this point. He's at Eastwatch. So it's very interesting to figure out why she's going to get burned. Maybe it could be to resurrect Jon, maybe to help Stannis or Jon. It's very unclear why she's going to get burned in the books, and we're not there yet. We definitely know it's not going to be with Stannis, I don't think. I think Melisandre will just do it on her own, I'm assuming. There's a lot going on with that plot, so with that being said, you also have the Manderleys who could go to Stannis, which would be a huge boost in troops, and would actually give Stannis the numbers with the Freys' force being defeated. So that's why I think Stannis probably actually does win the Battle of Winterfell, or the Battle of Ice. I'm just not sure how. I'm not sure how. I think maybe they could storm Winterfell. I just think maybe in this situation, Stannis dies. Because I feel like his plot is coming to an end. But I could see it going on a little longer. I just think for the story, Stannis probably will die, seeing as though in the show, if he was more of a major character, they wouldn't have killed him off like that, and they would have kept him alive. So I think that's what probably is going to happen. Now that leads me on to my next topic. So Jon Snow's resurrection. In the books, it happens very similar to the way it does in the show. Jon Snow gets a pink letter from Ramsay. So this is the major difference, because the letter in the show comes after, and it's kind of like, it's like a little rendition of the pink letter, but it's not the real thing. But he gets that in the same chapter. He dies about halfway through, basically saying to Jon that, he wants Arya back, which isn't Arya, it's Jane Poole. He wants his Reek back, which is Theon, which Jon doesn't even have. He basically wants Jon to give up the vow and the princess, which is like Mance's sister's kid, I think. I'm not completely sure on that one. I always get a little mixed up on the wildling stuff, but basically wants those, and then basically threatens Jon that if he doesn't do these things, either he's going to eat his heart out or something. Also, he says that Mance Rayder is basically in a cage for all the North to see. So, just a really threatening letter from Ramsay, which we're not sure if it is from Ramsay. I'm going to get into that a little later on conspiracies and stuff. But we're not even sure if it is from Ramsay. There could be some other motivations. It's very unclear. There's a lot of possible people that could have done it. But again, not sure on that. So Jon Snow basically getting this letter is like, okay, we're going south and we're gonna, mess up Ramsay. By doing this, the Night's Watch kills him. They stab him very similar to the way they do in the show. The major difference is Jon says ghost at the end. Basically assuming that Jon, wargs into ghost. We have some evidence of this. I think it's the most likely way that Jon's consciousness goes, and he just goes into ghost. Which is really another cool theory is that when Robb died, he actually went into Grey Wind, which I think is a great theory. There's a lot of good videos on that if you ever want to look those up. Those are fantastic. I think it's really even more makes the Red Wedding even more tragic. But yeah, I think that's what's gonna happen. So what's then gonna happen is gonna be interesting because Melisandre is probably going to have to resurrect Jon. Like maybe something happens and she just resurrects him. I don't know. Like in the show, it's very dumbed down. They just like she just does a little thing and he's back. I think it'll be a lot more complex. Because it feels like everything you do in the show, or not in the show, in the book is somehow tied into blood magic. So this is where I'm thinking maybe they burn Shireen, and maybe Jon comes back. But I think it's definitely he's gonna come back through Ghost. So he dies, goes into Ghost, and then from Ghost goes back into his body. I think is what is gonna happen. But I don't know how they're gonna do it. Or they, I mean George R. R. Martin, if we ever get the book. Hopefully we get that. So I think that's what probably happens there. After he gets resurrected. Now that's interesting because I think he does do somewhat the same thing as he did in the show where he, tries to get the wildlings and maybe he goes south again. Because the pink letter is still there and he wanted to go south. So I feel like if he gets resurrected, he's going to go south. Now it'll be interesting if Stannis does win that battle, the manner in which he comes to Winterfell. Because in the show, he won the Battle of the Bastards and they made him king of the North. And this, he wouldn't have won any battles. He's like kind of like the rightful heir, I guess, at this point, because Sansa wouldn't be there. Unless Davos finds Rickon fairly quickly, he wouldn't be there. Bran's north of the wall, and then Arya's not going to be there either. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I don't have too many more predictions past that. I think there's a lot of like what ifs with the Stannis plot that like affects Jon's plot. But yeah, so looking at what I was gonna say, next, the pink letter. The pink letter is very interesting. I described it earlier. It's kind of something where 10 years, if let's say the books came out 2 years after each other, this probably wouldn't be a big deal. But I think it probably was something that we've all overthought just because it's a really cool concept. But the pink letter is thought to have been written by, there's multiple characters that people think could have done it. So the first one, and I think the one that's probably the most correct, is that just Ramsay wrote it. Which it makes a lot of sense for Ramsay to do it. He's trying to basically bait out, Jon, because Jon is still, basically half a Stark. And we see multiple times where he says Jon is a threat in the books and stuff like that. And I think for the most part, it's used in Ramsay's language. Now, the reasons it couldn't be Ramsay is in the books, every time Ramsay has written a letter, it said, the same type of handwriting, very like large and very like sharp and stuff like that. As well as the seal. The seal has been like, actually pink, and it's like I forget what the exact term is, but like accurate. We're just gonna say accurate. When he gets the pink letter in the books for Jon the second time, I believe he gets 2 letters from Ramsay. The second one's the pink letter. It's smeared. It's the pink color, but it's smeared. It's not like the actual like, Bolton or I guess the Dreadfort like sigil thing. Which is very odd. There's no mention of the handwriting at all. And then at the end, it just says Ramsay Bolton, Lord of Winterfell, and then doesn't say the other like lords of Winterfell, or not lords, but other people supporting Ramsay. In the other 2 or 3 letters he sent, it says like Lady Dustin of Barrowtown and whatever. It says all these people, and the pink letter just says Ramsay. So it's very odd why there's that difference. That's why a lot of people have like brought up questions as to why it may not be Ramsay. So the other main 2 that I think possibly could have done it were Mance, because a lot of the language used kind of makes sense. As he calls, Jon and the Night's Watch, basically calls them Black Crows. He calls Jon a bastard. Which Mance has done multiple times in the books. There's just a lot of references to Mance's kind of language that he does use. things he would know. My only problem with the Mance theory is there's not a lot of motive. Because Mance has said multiple times in the books that he doesn't want the wildlings to continue to bleed, to keep putting them in war. By sending this letter, he knows he's going to provoke Jon to come south, and he would probably try to come with the wildlings. So it doesn't really make much sense to me. Maybe to escape, but again, I don't really like the motives there. And then there's just a lot of what ifs. He'd have to get like the pink, wax and steal it. Uh, it's just a lot of what ifs, and I don't particularly believe in the theory. I like the Stannis one a lot more. But there's one like major flaw in the Stannis one. But there are a lot of things that do make sense with the Stannis one. So Stannis, the thing is, Stannis actually has one of the maesters of Ramsay. So he would actually and Theon's there. So he would actually know a lot of the language of which Ramsay would probably be speaking, and knows a lot of the information that's in the pink letter. And know how to imitate Ramsay. Also, you'd probably have that pink sealed wax or whatever. And know how like kind of how to do Ramsay's signature or whatever. But the motives make a lot of sense for Stannis, because Stannis could get, Jon, he's asked multiple times to be Jon Stark and help him take Winterfell, rally the North. Makes a lot of sense to try and get Jon to go south with the wildlings and whoever else. With that said, there are a couple holes. There's a couple holes. Jon getting there with the wildlings would take weeks, maybe even a month, to get, to Winterfell. With the storm right now in the books and how they'd be able to get all the wildlings together and then, march, it would take a while. So first of all, the Stannis want to wait that long? I don't think so, because they're already starving, they're freezing, they're dying. Like, it doesn't seem like a good plan to wait. So that doesn't make sense. And then two, Stannis really isn't that type of character to where he's going to play with you like mentally and just straight up lie to you and stuff like that. It's just not in Stannis' character. So I'm not really that is the one problem with the pink letter. I think it's a very interesting concept, but I think just because it's been 10 to 11 years now that we haven't had the winds of winter, I think we've just overthought the entire pink letter. And I don't think it was ever meant to be that big of a thing. I just think it's Ramsay with maybe George R. R. Martin left out a couple details to leave it a little mysterious, which is what he loves to do in the books. But in general, I think Ramsay wrote it. I think it was just something to mess with Jon, and it goes with his cruel nature and something he would do. That just makes sense. But hopefully all that's answered in a Winds of Winter. Hopefully it's not one of those things where he just leaves a mystery forever. But yeah. So, like I also said before, I did want to talk about the Davos plot, because the last we hear of Davos is he's going to Skagos. And I actually have a lot of concerns about this, because Skagos is a very dangerous island. Always has been. There are cannibals there. I'm not sure how Rickon ended up there in the first place. I don't know why you would take him there, but yeah. I think Davos actually might not come back from that. He might, or maybe I think somebody has to die on this trip. I think maybe Rickon dies or Davos dies. It's just I don't know. It would be a weird way, because if Davos comes back with Rickon, it just makes a lot of weird things happen. I think for plot point wise, I think we just get an end to Rickon's character when Davos goes to Skagos, and then maybe even Davos himself dies. Or maybe he does something similar to what he does in the show, where he just kind of buddies up with Jon, and maybe that's why Jon or Stannis' forces, maybe if Stannis was to die, goes to Jon, because of Davos. Who knows? I'm just very interested to see where that plot goes. I just think, for me personally, I just think it's Davos is going to die, and maybe Rickon too, maybe both. Who knows? But yeah, let me know what you guys think on that. I haven't heard a lot of theories what people think are going to happen there. I just personally think probably going to die. Because you look at George R. R. Martin, he really needs to eliminate a lot of POV characters, and it seems like a easy way to do it. as well as just shrinking the overall characters because there are a lot. There are a lot. So yeah, I just want to do a nice little short like podcast about some of the northern stuff going on. If you guys want to see more of this content, this was kind of just a little test run to see if there was any interest of this on the channel. If you guys want to see me do more of this, I'd be fine with doing this like a weekly thing. On top of our normal video that we're gonna upload with Luke. This is kind of just a fill-in video while Luke's gone. So yeah, subscribe, like, comment if you want to see more of the Game of Thrones stuff, or Song of Ice and Fire stuff. Let me know, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Thank you all for watching.